Hello everyone, welcome to Vert Mode. I'm excited to give you a sneak peek at our new course, Mastering Human Anatomy for 3D Artists. In this course, we dive deep into the captivating world of human anatomy, exploring techniques used by master artists throughout history to create anatomically accurate models. If you want to follow along with this demonstration, sign up for our emailing list to receive access to the image planes I'm using right now. And if you're ready to take your skills to the next level, enroll in the full course on Udemy. Links to our emailing list and Udemy page can be found in the video description. Let's get started.
So now we're going to move into the hand. The hand is very similar to creating the foot. It does have some differences. The other thing is we may want to create it going straight down rather than at this angle. We can do it at this angle, but as you saw with how we duplicated across the toes and connected things, it can be a lot easier if it's straight. The nice thing about 3D is we can always rotate things later. It's not like a drawing, it's not permanent, it's something designed to move, and if we do it correctly, it does move. So what can we do about that? My hand straight, my reference straight, how do I make this work? Well, what I like to do, I'll switch to a split view here so we can see this better, is I like to duplicate out my image plane, my front image plane. I'm just going to Control D here. Turn on my wireframe in the view that I intend to mirror across. I'm just going to turn off symmetry. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to snap the pivot of my image plane to the wrist vertice. So snap to vertex to that center vertice and just rotate this down to the fingers are straight-ish right around here. So that seems a little bit weird, but you can see that we could just make this our hand IEP. And as long as we're just looking at the hand, shouldn't be too annoying. Now, I will turn my symmetry back on to World X because one thing we are going to do is we are going to rotate this. We're going to snap to vertex here and ta-da, just like that. Now, a few changes I am going to make. I am going to flatten this out. I am going to flatten this out. And as you might have imagined with the foot, I'm also going to bring these in here on the sides, which seems a little bit weird, but these are going to represent our three middle fingers here for that side area. Now, I think I did do some rounding on the hand. Maybe I didn't, but one of the things I like to do is just kind of square this off here as much as possible, so that way we have something that looks like this. Weird little peg hands. I may also want to come in here and just flatten this angle since we are going to add in some more geometry and just get this to essentially be a cube, a little block coming off of here that is approximately the width of the wrist and approximately lines up with the middle three fingers where possible. And there's going to be a little bit of thumb meat there added later. But something like that is going to be, for the most part, the connections for the wrist. And maybe angle that in slightly. Okay, so just like we set up the other section for the foot, we are going to do the same here. So if you remember, the way we did that is we extruded all the way around the base of the foot to add in those two other areas we needed. You might think, wait a minute, that's only going to give us 4 slots for the hand, and you are absolutely correct. The thumb sits at a different angle. So the toes, they all point straight forward, but the thumb comes off at this side angle here, so we're going to have another one here for the thumb. Let's start by getting these set up. I'm going to start by adding in a extrusion to the sides. So we're just going to grab this side, we're going to shift select this side here, and we are going to extrude. So we can just click the extrude button and pull these out. And that is going to represent the width that the fingers are going to go to. I can then take the vertices here for the sides and use them to sort of shape the palm of the hand. And now that we have all the finger slots in place, we can actually take this and form the angle of the hand here, like so. And this is a little bit easier to see than the foot, which is kind of nice. The one downside is we don't really see the side volume of the hand too well. That's something we'll get to later, but that will give us sort of a base area there to work in. Now, as far as the side goes for the hand, if I go into my split view and we look at the hand, you can see it tapers in a bit. And my fingers are actually slightly bent. We're going to keep them straight here for the purpose of modeling and anatomy sculpting to begin with. We can add that bend in later, but I am going to bring these in, just grabbing these edges and pulling them forward slightly, so that way I get a slight tapering to the volume of the hand and it's not perfectly straight. So something a bit like that will be nice. Now from here, We're also going to add in a palm line that is going to be used to create the base of the thumb. So I want to think of this as going to where the thumb kind of comes off of here. And I'll just add it right across here with the multi-cut. And then for the sake of simplicity, flatten this down, maybe even give it an angle here. So that way we have access to that for the thumb. And maybe take a moment here just kind of shaping that a little bit better to prepare us for where that thumb is going to attach to. But this is going to set up our topology for the fingers. So you'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 slots here, and then a 5th slot for the thumb. Okay? So that is going to be the base structure we want to get started with. I'm going to pause here because I feel like this is a good spot to save before we go on the journey that is going to be the hand. We set up our image plane to be rotated back there so we can follow it. We came in here, we set up the base topology here to attach our fingers to. So the next adventure is going to add in the thumb and index fingers to this model. So what I want you to do is I want you to get set up to this point, get all these in place, and then we're going to add in the fingers next. Okay, so at this point, we're ready to move into the hand. There's going to be a couple changes I'm going to make this time around. We know we're going to mirror this across, so I'm going to turn off symmetry because I know I'm not going to need it. And just to prep us for this, I'm going to delete half the model. So that way in my brain, I just know, hey, we're going to mirror this later. So we're going to delete that. Now, what's my reason for doing this? A lot of the techniques we're about to use don't really mirror well. Now, the first thing I want to do is add in the thumb, just like I did the big toe. The thumb is sort of a weird area because it comes off of the palm and off of the side of the hand. And like the big toe, it's different from the other fingers. We can go ahead and look up a reference here on the Anatomy for Sculptor page, and they have all sorts of different things for hands, so you can see it pretty easily. But tons of great images for the form structures of the hands. Let me see if there's a couple down here that are good. I actually like some of their earlier stuff. This one's really nice for seeing that finger profile. We might use that. This one here just kind of shows the hand. But if we take a look at this, you can see that similar situation where the thumb kind of points out. And if you look at your thumb, it actually looks a lot like a big toe compared to your other fingers. They look quite a bit different, but you'll see those point in a different direction. So that is going to be one of those key features we're looking for in the hand, is those areas that things tend to point. Now, the faces I'm going to use to create this is going to be one off of the palm and one off the side. So these are the two faces I'm going to grab. We're just going to perform an extrude on these and pull these out. So we're going to get something like this. Now, since we're no longer working symmetrically, I can use the circularize here. So I'm going to come up here to my Edit Mesh menu and use circularize to circularize this into something I can use for the thumb. If you need to adjust the angle, you can use the twist here, like so. And I'm just going to twist this so we get something kind of straight on, and we can scale that in. Now, an easy way to work with the thumb is to actually extrude it straight and rotate it later. This is something you can decide if you want to do. It can be a little bit easier to work with. At this particular setup, it is going at a nice angle, so I might just keep it here because that is approximately the angle I might want this to work at. But you just have to think about what you're comfortable with as an artist. I am going to move this out a little bit more just to get it into position. And then just like we did previously, I'm going to extrude this to get the length of the thumb. Now, this is only approximate here, so just be aware of that. It is not a perfect representation of the length because this is moving forward into space with depth applied. So we do kind of have to gauge this. You can look for proportions of the hand to get a feel for how that is going to look. You can also look at reference, but I'm going to click the extrude button, and you'll see as long as I extrude on the normal here, it should work out. I'm going to extrude this to be approximately where I'm seeing it end here, like so. That's a pretty long thumb, but that probably is correct. The thumb should fall just a little bit past this big finger, maybe a little bit too long there, so I am going to scale that down and get that into place. Now, like we did previously, I am going to scale this in a bit here, and I actually am going to flatten it a bit too to start to get something a bit more thumb-shaped. And then what we're going to do once we have this extruded is we're going to add some edge loops here for us to utilize. So let's go ahead and add in one edge loop down the mid one for the main joint of the thumb. That is going to bend across. And then we're going to add one on either side for the purpose of shaping. So we're going to start out with a total of 3. And let's go ahead and just take a moment to shape this into a thumb shape. This is a little bit easier to see than your foot, so feel free to grab your thumb and take a look. In terms of this, kind of skinnies towards the back, just like our big toe does. It gets a lot rounder near the tip. So it kind of scales out, and then the tip is going to scale in a bit more than what I have here. So that's looking a bit more thumb-like in the profile, but there are a few things I'm going to want to do to shape this a little bit better. One thing that helps with the thumb is taking this top area and flattening it. Now, if you don't have the right angle, you'll see I currently have world. Component can be a good one to move to, and we can flatten there if it's not already flat. We can do the same thing in the move view here to component, and we can actually pull that down. So that way we get something a bit more like that. And then what I might do is just adjust this placement here of these joints to be more thumb-like. Coming from the side view here, I'm going to shape this so that it goes into that classical thumb shape and kind of rounds into it. I'm going to pull these up into here and just kind of shape this to be more of a thumb from a side view. Looking at the top view here, this is pretty pronounced. And as we move back, we're probably going to have to adjust some of these, but something like this is going to start to look a bit more thumb-like. And I think I want to push these a little bit more. I think one of the issues is for the tip here, I don't have these currently going in. And for this one, I might want to switch to something like object mode rather than component mode. And just continue to adjust these. So take a moment to make this look more thumb-like is the moral of the story. We can always tweak these later once we have everything into place. But this will definitely be one of those things that helps kind of sell this as a thumb early on. So I think that's looking okay for a thumb and is definitely something we can use. I also feel like my thumb does feel a little bit small compared to the hand. If you want to fix that, you can highlight these faces, hit D, and move the pivot back to the base. And I'm trying to use V to snap to vertex here. It doesn't always like it when you have a lot of vertices on screen. And then you can scale that out slightly. You could also just move it. That might actually work better. And adjust the edges as you see fit. Now, the thumb, if you look at it straight on, kind of has a 45-degree angle to the hand. It doesn't sit straight like this. So what we can do is we can grab the faces here again, and just like I did, hit D and V to snap to vertex, and just snap this back. Kind of look at it straight on and rotate it to have a 45-degree angle. Now, when we rotate, I'm not going to want to grab the various axes that this has. I'm actually going to want to grab this one out here, which is going to be orient based on your camera angle, basically. And just rotate this to have a 45-degree angle and maybe pull it down as well. But get something that feels a little bit more natural to how the thumb comes off of the hand. So something like that is going to be pretty close to what I'm looking for now that I have that thumb shape in place. But this is going to cause a little bit of funk down here in the base of the hand. So we're going to want to adjust the topology here to make it look a little bit better. What we're going to do is add in some edges here to just kind of help realign this and make it look better. So I'm going to add an edge to each of these to basically create a triangle. And what I want to do is go to every corner here of our thumb and use the multi-cut tool to just draw a new edge across. And then delete the edges that are causing issues. So I'm going to use a multi-cut to go across here, 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 multi-cut for across here, and a multi-cut for across here. And at this point, that should give us a new edge on each of these. And then we just want to go back and delete the original edges that were causing the issue. Now to do so, we're going to select them in edge mode and do an edit mesh, delete edge and vertex. And we just have to kind of be careful as we go around here and make sure we're selecting the correct edges to delete. but it should be every edge on this side, I believe. I am getting a little bit of confusion down here, but I think that is correct. So once we have that set, we should end up with an all-quad thumb and have better alignment. That should give us a better look. So once we have those deleted, we can take some time just reshaping this to look nicer for the thumb. So I'm just going to move these vertices here and round this out a little bit better, but that should be good. One thing I need to do is move this base down more, which will also kind of extend the thumb. You can use a mesh tool slide edge for this. Double click, mesh tool slide edge, middle mouse, and just do this for some of the other areas of the thumb as needed. But that should give us an okay looking thumb here. And we may need to scale that slightly, but there we go. So now we have the thumb coming off of the hand there, and we have that base structure going that we are looking for. You can take a moment here to adjust some of the edges as well on the top side, but it will probably be best to do that once we have all the fingers in place. I will, however, come in here in world mode and just pull this down a little bit. So that way we're getting that back arch of the thumb a little bit better, and we could do the same thing here and use this to kind of get the meat of the thumb out here. So this will round around the wrist, as will this, and so will these. And at this point, we can play around with the thumb angle. I don't know if I quite like this. We have the 45 degrees, but I might come in here now and use the rotation tool. I don't really want to rotate from this point. I still want to go back to this base pivot if I can. Maybe even one of these corner points, and just kind of angle this out more to represent the thumb angle, and we could use this to kind of find that angle a little bit better. This thumb is looking huge compared to that one. I don't know if that's a perspective thing or what, but proportionately this should be correct. It could also be a little bit too thick, which could be part of the issue of what I'm seeing here with my thumb, is that it's just too thick of a finger proportionately to the body. And that's something I didn't really check, is like how thick that thumb's going to be compared to other fingers. But I think that is getting to be where we want it. However, I think I will just backpedal and keep it there. But yeah, that thumb is too thick. So if we want to thin the thumb down, it's just a matter of scaling these in uniformly. Not really a huge deal here. Select these in vertex mode. You can always move back in component mode to maintain the axis space. And once we get our other fingers in there, we'll have a better idea of how it should go. But spend some time shaping and moving the thumb, getting it to be an angle that you like. Remember, it sits at kind of a 45-degree angle, and then sits off of the hand a little bit. I think, there we go. I think I'm finally getting that to be somewhere I like. However, that does feel really large. I think I'm going to have to revisit the size after I get the other fingers in there, though. The other fingers are going to kind of be a better gauge for thickness. However, I do feel like we are getting too thick of a thumb here. It could also just be too tall, which is a factor. I can just scale that down, scale that in a bit. I think that's looking a bit better. Yeah, that's starting to match my concept a little bit more. I think skinning this in will help too, and then just revisiting these and making them more thumb-like. I feel like right now I have a good big toe look going, but not really a good thumb look. So I might want to just kind of revisit those as much as possible. I also feel like this might be a factor here. I might use something like the slide edge to move this forward more, and do the same with these. There we go. Okay, I think I'm finally getting something I can call a thumb. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. New iteration. But that is going to be the process of creating the thumb there. So the thumb is a little bit tricky because it does sit at that weird side angle. Do your best with it. Remember, we can always correct it in sculpting to the best of our ability, but you do want to try and get that nice topology so that it's rolling across the hand there. I know that base area can be a little bit tricky. You guys can look at the reference file if you need an idea of how to get that set up, but that will get our thumb in place. All right. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and model your thumb, get that in there, get it set up, and then we're going to take a look at creating our fingers next. Now that we have our thumb in place, we're ready to start building out our fingers, and we're going to build out the most iconic finger, the one we point with, which is the index finger. So we're just going to come down here to the front of the hand here. We're going to get the index finger, the one right here by the thumb, and we're going to start pulling that out. Now, this approach is very similar to the toes. What we're going to do is we're going to start by just grabbing these two faces here. We're going to extrude them. Notice this is extruding at an angle because I have this currently set to component mode, I believe. If we want to, we could set this to world, or we could just use our extrude tool. I'm going to set this to world so it goes straight down and just hold down shift. Not that far. And just get a nice little base. Now, similar to what we did with the toes, since we're not working symmetrically, we can take advantage of the circularize tool here. So we could come up here to our edit mesh, circularize these faces so they are a circle, and use the twist here to just kind of straighten these out to the best of our abilities. Generally, what I like to do is find a view like the top view here. You could come into X-ray mode, like so, and look for where those lines are. So these top lines, and you'll notice that there's a little jag to it here, a little aliasing. If you go ahead and just nudge this until that aliasing goes away, you get something that's straight. If there's not a whole lot, it doesn't really matter, but you can see you can get it to be perfectly straight there, and that's how I've been doing it for years. Okay, now that that's in place, I'm just going to grab the scale tool and scale this to be a little bit nicer and be confused why it's not perfectly flat. I thought I pulled it out straight. Guess I didn't. We can come in here to the components, switch to the world space on our scale, and just flatten this out. But something like that is going to give us a base for our finger. Now from here, just like we did with the toe, we are going to extrude it down to the tip of the finger. So I'm just going to shift drag, and I'm going to go a little bit extra here because you'll notice that the fingers are bent in this model, which means that they have a little bit of curvature. You can look at this for proportions. If you take a look at the index finger, it runs to about the palm of the hand. So I say that's a good length. We can always adjust these lengths later. And I'm just going to scale this in a bit to skinny the tip and make it a bit more finger-like. And we can also take the tops and the bottoms of this and adjust those, but I think we'll do those after we add in some of the details. I feel like that's getting a little bit too skinny. So let's just make that a little bit bigger, and there we go. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add 2 loops for the joints along the finger. We're going to use the multi-cut for that, and we can see the joints in our concept, so it is pretty easy to place those. So those are going to be our 2 joints that the finger is going to bend around. While I'm at it, you might notice that it is sort of in the middle of the hand. It would look better if we were to pull it up to align with the top of the hand a bit more. So I'm just going to grab these and pull these up. You'll notice the palm looks a little bit funny. We're going to shape that later. Right now we're focusing on the fingers, so that's the main thing we want. Now, once we have these in place, what we're going to do is we're going to add an extra edge loop on either side of these to give us a little bit more shaping power. So what do I mean by that? Basically, down the middle of each of these. This is going to get one. This is going to get one. This is going to get another one. And this is going to get one here. So this midsection here ends up with 2. And that's because we're going on either side of the joint. So those are the new edges that we're going to create to help us shape this. So the next thing to do is to just start shaping. Now, there are some good references up on the anatomy for sculptors that have nice side views of fingers, so you can really see how these look. So once again, that's this resource here on ArtStation. And just their freebies, you know, a lot of really good stuff you can see from the side. So this is a nice clear indication of kind of the movement the finger has. But we can take these to shape these. So let's start with the top part, the fingertip. One of the things I like to do is just take the fingertip and scale it to be flat and pull it down a little bit. Flat fingertips always seem to help. And then for the tip, we're just going to pull this back here so we end up with that shape. Now, coming underneath here, we can pull this out to have the under volume that the finger has. And this is pretty good here. We could pull that up slightly if we want to, just to kind of indicate a knuckle. And that is a pretty good tip shape. Now, coming into the next area, this is where a joint is, and joints tend to cut in a little bit. I guess technically the joint's here for this one, because we did it on either side. But we could use this to kind of pull these out a little bit here, to add a bit more volume to the finger, because you'll notice on the underside of the finger it has sort of a nice curve. And then on the top side we can get a knuckle, like so. And then we can proceed to get another underside here. And what you end up with is a nice silhouette for a finger. And if we wanted to exaggerate the knuckle up here, we could also do so. I don't really think it's that necessary. But there you go. That is essentially the shape of a finger. When we smooth that out, you'll see how that has a nice fingery shape to it. Unfortunately, these angles are a little bit weird side by side, but hopefully that reads good enough to where you can kind of see how that form is going to translate into a finger for us. So that is going to be the process of setting up a single index finger. Pretty straightforward. Like I mentioned, we're going to tackle this palm part later. Right now, we're mainly interested in the fingers and deciding if we have the right length or not. Now that I have the detail in there, I can measure it again to just kind of see. It's a little bit small. If you want to make your finger longer, it's pretty easy with this being straight on. You just grab these, D to move your pivot, V to snap, get to the base there, and then just scale it. You can also just move it slightly to begin with, and then scale it. All right, so now that we have this finger done, we have the scale looking a little bit better here. Let's go ahead and save our iteration. So make sure you save as, just in case there's something that changed you weren't aware of. And we are good to go. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to model your own index finger for your character. Go ahead and get the extrusion in there, get the detail added, and then we're going to duplicate this over next. All right, so now that we have this finger, we can duplicate it just like we did with toe. So I'm going to use the same technique where I just Control D my entire body. I'm going to use this isolate select right here to isolate it. And come down here to the finger. You can select most of it, and then for the base, I just like to do a selecting row. That'll get the rest of it. Should be good. And then if you shift drag around the body here and hit delete, that'll clear out everything but the finger. And now we'll have our finger by itself that we can move and duplicate. So just like we did with the toe, we're going to do a quick modify center pivot on this. So that way it's centered. Move this over and move our pivot again. Let's see. I'm going to flatten this just to make it easier to connect and move my pivot to the top corner here like so. And if I hit D and then hold V to move that pivot, we can snap it into place here. Now the cool thing is at this point we can also scale these out a bit. So if you take a look at your fingers, you can kind of get a sense of scale. One thing you're going to notice is they do get longer, but they also get slightly wider in between. And this one falls right about the tip of that one. We can also use this kind of as a guide, but this isn't a very good guide for fingers because once again, they're kind of tilted. So proportionately, you can kind of see it, but since they're not straight, it's not the greatest. So this one's just slightly wider, slightly longer than the index finger, not by much. So pretty subtle there. We can then Control D this again and V to snap and make this one slightly skinnier, and then this one is slightly shorter than the index on my hand, or the same length, but the palm just kind of goes at an angle. Not 100% sure there. And you'll notice we may need to even some of these out a bit better, which is fine. And then lastly, we have the pinky finger. I'm going to Control D and V to snap. You'll see a large portion of the length difference on the pinky as its placement on the hand being lower. This one falls about mid-joint here with this one, so I'm going to scale that down to be about mid-joint. So I think that is about where the pinky goes. And the pinky is quite strange. It is a lot smaller than the other ones by an entire digit length. But like I mentioned, part of that's just where it's at on the hand, and it is a little bit skinnier. So something like that is going to give us a decent looking hand, I think. We can check this against our other area. Good enough. I didn't really vary the widths of the hands too much. I guess that's something I could have done, the knuckle widths, but they're pretty straightforward for the hands. If you did want to come back and adjust these, basically, they get a little bit skinnier on any area that's not the knuckle. So we could take a moment to do that shaping real quick here. But that's pretty much it. Pretty subtle. Just kind of pulling in anything that is not a knuckle slightly. And then we can stitch it all back together. And this is one of those things that's not even going to show up that much once we smooth this, because it pretty much just sticks. Okay, so let's get started. Let's isolate the hand here and just delete our first hole out here. Then we can switch over here to our finger, and for the finger, remember what I like to do is just take these and flip them, move them forward a little bit here. And then we're just going to select these two together, do a mesh combine, right-click into vertex mode, and do target weld. And we're just going to weld one corner to one corner, and then repeat this process. Now you see something weird happen there. You gotta be careful of that. Sometimes you have a selection going, and Maya remembers. And you don't want it to remember your selection when it comes to target welding. But just weld those verts back together just like we did with the toe. And just like that, we have a finger attached to our hand. We can move to the next finger now. Same story. We can just delete these to remove the hole. Remove the isolation, shift select, but before we do, maybe just pull this out a little bit so it's not connected. It's just easier to see when doing a target weld. Then we can do a mesh combine, right click into vertex mode, target weld, and just come in here and weld these away. Once again, you'll see that warp there. It had a previous selection. If you have that previous selection, just click off of it. That clears the selection. And then you can come in here and start welding away at these vertices. Very useful. All right. And lastly, we can come in here and delete these and select this final little finger here. Go into vertex mode, and I missed a step there. Make sure you do a mesh combine. Got to get that combine going. Then get into the target weld. I was trying to jump the gun there and get ahead of myself. All right. That was an interesting click. And we'll just go ahead and push those in. And just like that, we have a hand. So press the 3 button, check that out, make sure all those are attached, and that is going to get our fingers in place. All right, so that is going to connect all those fingers in. Make sure you save, that's quite an accomplishment. And then we're going to explore finishing off the palm and mirroring. But there you go, pretty complex thing. The bane of every early artist, the hand. We have conquered it, almost. Okay, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and duplicate your finger, do additional shaping if you have to, and then get those welded onto the hand to finish off the fingers, okay? So give that a shot, and then we'll take a look at the last steps of finishing off the hand here. All right, so now that we have our fingers in place, we're ready for the last steps we're gonna do here, which is gonna be some shaping to the hand. So right now our hand is very blocky and not quite where we want it. One of the first things I'm going to do is just bring down the palm line so we don't have this super thick hand. I don't know how this person's hands are this thick, but there's some thick hands. So we're just going to pull these down so they sit more at an angle. And this is about the thickness we want the hand to be receding. I think that is about right. It gets pretty meaty, but here we do want to bring that down. Now, another thing we want to do is we want to start working on the roundness of the hand. It's very square. We got some crazy Minecraft hands going here. So we're just going to pull these in on the sides here a bit, maybe even down to create a palm ledge, and just kind of get something a little bit more round shaped. I had a 3D modeler instructor in college, Hong Soon Park, very nice gentleman. And what I remember most from his lectures is him saying needs more round shapes. It was a lifelong lesson that I've taken to heart. So whenever you're working with your polygons, need more round shapes. Just remember that. English wasn't his first language, so ancient wisdom he had. Anyways, so let's go ahead and round these and get those round shapes in here. Pull these down. All right, and most of this is going to be rounded quite nicely when we transition to our sculpting application, which in this course I will be demonstrating with ZBrush. So just be aware of that, but getting the initial round shapes can help, and you can see how that helps read on the hand there. I also might bring up the knuckles slightly here. I feel like we're kind of losing that on the hand there. Male hands tend to have more of a knuckle ridge than females, and adult hands in general have more of a knuckle ridge there. It's kind of funny, my wife doesn't seem to have much of a knuckle ridge. She jokes that she has baby hands still. She has little dimples in that area. It's kind of funny. Anyways, there we go. Now, one thing you might notice is we are getting quite a bit of stretching in here when we smooth compared to the fingers. So you can see how we get these really fairly tight quads here. In this one, we're not. Something we can do to help that is just add a palm line here. Let's see if we can get that to look decent, and you'll see how that really reduces the stretching in the hand there. It's going to let us get a bit more detail in the sculpting pass. We can also use this to kind of shape this if we want. It can be good to tuck the bottom line a little bit. So we just pull that in slightly, like so. That way we get a little bit of that base palm line. The top of the hand's pretty flat, but there you go. So that's going to get that in there nice and smooth and rounded. Now from here, I'm going to save, do a quick save scene as. We'll just make this our 13th iteration. And we're going to mirror this bad boy again. So our mirroring line should be all set up. If you didn't touch this, you shouldn't have to scale it in or anything like that. But just to review, you can double click this edge and with the scale tool, scale it flat and X. And then make sure it's aligned to the X of the grid. You probably don't need to do that though, because like I mentioned, you'll notice nothing really happened there. And then we can just click the mirror button, which should all be set up from the last time we did it. But in the case it's not, make sure you're mirroring across the right axes. Maybe you deleted the other half of the model this time on accident, whatever. Just make sure you're set to the right mirror direction and hit apply, and then take that merge threshold down to 0.001. And there we go. Check for any smoothing issues down the center line. Like I mentioned, sometimes you do get some rogue vertices. It looks like it's not happening today, which is great. You can highlight and hit delete if you need to. And of course, a big factor I suggest doing is clearing out that history log. You'll see we have a long history here. Just do an edit, delete alt by type history to clear that out, and we should be good to go. So now our man is looking a bit more correct. We got our hands, we got our feet. The only thing we are missing is our face. So let's go ahead and save. And as a challenge, what I want you to do is finish shaping your hands and mirror your body to be whole again. All right, and that is going to finish our study of the hands and feet in terms of modeling. What we're going to look at next is we're going to move up to the face, which is going to be one of the more challenging portions of the character, especially when it comes to polygons. Okay, so do your best to get your hand in there, and then we'll move up to the face. For the next part of this lecture series, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can catch it when it goes live. We're going to give you guys the full modeling section out of the course as a preview. And just as a reminder, if you would like to follow along, sign up for our emailing list below to get the image planes I'm using in this demo. And if you want to take the full course, check us out on Udemy. I'll see you in the next video.